Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Today's guest, we were just blabbing off camera for a while. You said something interesting, like the construction space, and for whatever reason, it's such a big part of the community in Calgary, but it's just like it's always behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, and I told you, I grew up in the industry. My dad built houses. I didn't do shit. I just moved lumber around, but it's fun to have characters like you come through here because it's such an interesting perspective. So name and who you are.
Sure. My name is Byron Brooks. I am the owner, operator of Alair Calgary. We build custom homes and renovations, and I'm also the co-founder of a group called Builders and Brews. And I do a few other things, but I want to follow up on what you just said there. I didn't think of it before when we were chatting, but maybe you could be involved. If I had endless time and resources, I would love to do a research project to make a bastard family tree of construction companies in Calgary. Because if you start going back, at both construction and design firms, it's incredible how this industry is set up to sort of spawn off other individual firms. So when you start tracking you mentioned Doug Rollick. I know you've had him as a guest before. I bet you he could say okay, I used to work for these guys and my project manager went from here to there. And then my other project manager started his own company and now he's successful. And so there's a sort of it's a nature of the industry, but it's also a fundamental flaw with the industry. Because every time you start a new thing, the sort of institutional knowledge that you gained at your previous location just goes away. So it creates this sort of fragmented industry. So there's a puzzle. There's a puzzle in there. If anybody wants to solve it, please go for it. And we'll get a bunch of beers and a bunch of sticky notes, and we'll make that big bastard family tree for the last 20 years of construction companies in Calgary.
It is interesting because I think, as a trade person, you're kind of doing your own thing, right?
Yeah.
You have a task and you kind of go do it. You have your own tools and you're kind of self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And then if you put that beside having any entrepreneurial energy, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to go start my own thing.
Yeah.
So it's that, and it just keeps on growing and growing. And then all of a sudden there's 500 builders and 700 electricians and 1,000 plumbers.
Which is glorious, but it's so but I don't know if you're capturing as much information from those iterations as you could be if somehow there was more connectivity between all those different groups.
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting. Who's going to start this thing?
I don't know. I've been talking about that for years. At some point, I'm just going to have to maybe we'll host a Builders and Brews event that's just that, where it's okay, everybody bring the design firm, your design history, and we'll just start there's a workshop there that could be performed to at least start mapping it out.
It's like a construction it's like ancestry tree for construction.
Yeah. There's something in there. I don't know.
You've seen a couple of these.
Yes.
And so what I like to do is just let the guests go back as far as they want to go. And the cool thing for me is, I don't know shit about you. The reason you and I connected was because I saw that you were doing something cool, Tail Gunner, which are my buddies. Yeah. And then, the internet connects and here we are. So this is cool for me. So take it back as far as you want to go. And that's how you grew up, where you grew up, what inspired you, just what you're interested in growing up, and I'll just kind of drag you along and we'll end up to where you are today.
All right. We'll think about how long I want to make this story, but I think we can go back pretty far. So when I was up back to my earliest memories, kind of age 5, 6 sort of, it's funny to think when you actually start remembering things that aren't bicycle crashes, but I remember a bunch of bicycle crashes there. But at that time I lived in Burnaby, BC with my family. And my dad felt called to go become a pastor. So that set us on a journey for the next 15 or 20 years of traveling all over Canada and the U.S. While he pursued his education as a pastor and did internships in different churches and went to different schools.
Sorry.
Go ahead, yeah.
He just decided to become a pastor? Was the church always part of his life and then he decided to go all in?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sorry. His father was also a pastor, but he was determined to not be. But then he missed the mark. So he felt, in his words, called by God to go pursue ministry.
Crazy.
Maybe we have different perspectives on that as I've gotten older, but he felt called and compelled to go pursue that. And My mom and my family went along for the ride, and it was not without precedent because his dad was also a pastor. So he had some sort of foundation in what that world would look like. But what it meant for us was like moving to Edmonton for 2 years, and then moving away, and then moving back to Edmonton for a year while he went to King's College. And then we moved to Ontario. Then we moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan. There's a seminary there that he had to go to, and then we bounced back and forth from there. So like by the time I was 21, I think I had moved 23 times or something. A couple of those were as an adult near the end. So that's a big part of my upbringing. But one of the anchors in that upbringing was all of my uncles all worked in construction. Not all, but most of them, and the ones that I kind of remember. They all worked in construction in various jobs. Construction, or there was like 3 streams, it seemed like. They either worked in growing flowers in greenhouses, or they worked in construction, or they worked in ministry. So I had those models. When you look at those, it's like, okay, yeah, construction looks the best to me. So that's what I pursued when I got out of high school. So when I was finished high school, I lived in southwestern Ontario at the time. And then I went, my principal invited me to leave school a little bit early. So I took him up on his offer and went out to BC to start working in construction with my uncles.
Early?
Yeah.
Like that's like I guess you were so accustomed to bouncing around.
Yeah.
To go from out east to go.
Yeah, that didn't matter. And I had family there still. So it was like, it was an easy move, and I was ready to get moving and start going to work, basically. School I wasn't the best at that.
When you were bouncing around for all those like informative years of your life, what happens then? Like for me, I went to the same school from kindergarten to grade 9.
Yeah.
Then I went to high school for 3 years. So I went to 2 schools for all, I could ride my bike to both schools. It was like, my whole community was being built at a young age. What does it look like for you when you're bouncing around like crazy?
Yeah, so that's interesting. And so I'm of a couple different minds on this, but I know in my experience, like I look back, I was the oldest, so I had 4 younger siblings. Okay. And so you kind of get a case study on how that model plays out for 5 different people. But for me, I liked it in retrospect, at least, because every time you move, it gives you an opportunity to kind of change things about your character that are shaped by how other people perceive you. So if you're the class clown, you kind of get stuck into that, like, oh, Jeff's gonna do something silly here. I know it. Just wait. Like, you get stuck in that model, even though it might not resonate with who you actually are at that time as you've gotten older. So every time you move, you get an opportunity to kind of change things or try out new things about your own personality. Whether you're cognizant of it or not, it's a unique opportunity to shape that. And I always liked playing sports, so I never really had a hard time meeting new people, because sports would become a forum to get involved and meet new people and get engaged in a community or a school community wherever I was. So
did you? It wasn't uncomfortable walking into these different scenarios?
Oh, heck yeah. And the reason I'm of 2 minds about it is because I'm on the other side of it now.
You can be reflective on what was happening back then?
I couldn't then.
No, at the time though, you probably shit yourself.
Now I can. Yeah. It would be like, then it was always kind of stressful, and they weren't small moves either. It wasn't like moving across the city. It was like, I look back and I'm amazed at how my mom and my dad were able to kind of string it all together with 5 kids and not a ton of income and no support. Like, moving to a new place now, we have I think now, okay, if I were to move to a new city, if I moved to Regina, how would I go about developing a community? And I'd use Instagram as a tool, and I'd go here and I'd join this meetup, and I'd join that men's soccer league, and I would get my kids enrolled in this. Before the kind of internet, you couldn't do any of that. I have no idea. My parents had sort of a faith-based community that they would be able to engage with in each new place they went to. But even that's you can't fully count on that, and it would still be alarming. So the reason I'm on both sides of that whole moving issue is because now I have kids. And so now you're like, I want my kids to have some sort of resilience programmed in. So you want to put them through hardship, but not undue suffering, right? So how do you strike that balance? So recently we actually moved within Calgary, which to me is like, you can just move. We'll just move our stuff over there. No big deal. But I kind of forgot that, my kids who are 8 and 7, it's a big deal. Like, they haven't done this before. They lived in one house for their whole lives. Like, the house that we just moved out of is the longest I lived in one house in my whole life, and that was 9 years, and I'm in my 40s. So
that's like, crazy to say,
man. Yeah. So it's weird. So now I look at it through their lens, but I also think that it's a good it's a good exercise to go through for them. Like, they still have their same friends because we're close by the same neighborhood, but they'll also develop new friends. And like I said, we had that conversation as a family. Like, look, you have this opportunity. Like, maybe you didn't like being the guy who was good at math. Like, you can reshape that. You can do something else. So it's interesting.
Do you think without sport, do you think that your experiences would have been different? You know, you bounce into these different neighborhoods and schools, and you're just, you know, if you're into whatever.
Yes, yeah, 100%. And I was a bit weird because I vacillated between like sports and reading, and so I could entertain myself on my own because I would be in a book all the time, or I'd be running around like a maniac. Like, I was pre the time when ADHD was a thing that people diagnosed. So I was ahead of that by a few years. My dad actually got diagnosed with it when he was in his 30s, but I kind of I dodged the diagnosis for a few years, but that's probably a part of who I was. Without sport, it would have been a very different upbringing for me. I like to think I would have found other ways of connecting with people, but that was certainly the easiest. And to be clear, I was never I'm moderately good at sports, but I would just bust my ass and play whatever was available and try and play as a team, and that always contributed to getting along with people.
So you get asked to leave high school early?
Yeah. Oops.
Smooth. I like how you put it,
Mom. Yeah.
And through high school, like, what's going on? Is it are you starting to work at a young age? Like, or are you bouncing around so often that you just can't really
No. I was always working. So and that's part of it, is once I got a sense of like, wait a second, the skills that I have. So I went to I went to Christian schools all the way through, and I went to, like, the one I was in high school in was quite a small, fairly conservative Christian school. So just things that I thought about and pushed up against, which was like any kind of rule or any kind of sort of arbitrary, like, you got to follow this because so and so says so. I didn't stick too well with me. So there were some times when, like, just dumb stuff like that you do when you're a kid. Well, maybe it's not that dumb, but like making the case, just to play devil's advocate in wasn't family health class, but whatever it was called in a Christian school, like making the case for maybe sometime abortion should be considered. And like, that was immediately to the principal's office, right, and addressing down and detention. And it was like, but I'm just trying to talk about these things. Yeah. Like, I don't even really mean it. Maybe I don't know what I think. I'm 15. Like, I shouldn't be. Anyway, so yeah, that I got stuck there. So I had a taste of going to work in construction in between grade 11 and 12. Okay.
Like summertime job?
Yeah, I flew out to BC, or I drove out, actually. I've made that drive a few times from Ontario to BC. So I drove out.
To go see family?
No, like, yeah, both before, because like you couldn't, it was cost prohibitive to fly with 7 people across the country. So we would drive more regularly. But then between grade 11 and 12, I drove out to BC and worked building greenhouses with one of my uncles, like these massive, like 15, 20 acre greenhouse structures. Cool. And then once I had a sense of like, wait a second, the things I like to do, work hard, be part of a team, those have value. And somebody's going to like literally pay me for those things. Then I just kind of got that bug and never really looked back. But I had worked on farms and worked on, I was always working on something when I was younger.
Did you know young, like in high school, that the trade, like, you know, manual labor, using your hands?
Yeah.
Did you know that was your path? Like sitting in an office and.
I knew an academic path wasn't for me, but that's very much like, it's again in that window of time, which I hope is being corrected now, or I see it being corrected, where like university was the only path you were considering. Anything else was less than. Like, I remember sitting in an office with my our high school's guidance counselor, who was also my father's guidance counselor when he went to high school in Hamilton, which gives you a sense of how in touch with the times this guy was, Mr. Vandermolen. So he said, like, well, if you really pick it up, maybe you can go to community college. And I was thinking, like, boy, man, you're way off base. Like, how could he look around and not recognize that the demographic that was paying the tuitions and thereby his salary largely was comprised of farmers, framers, and other blue collar workers? Like how could he sort of eschew the values that they demonstrate every day? And anyway, so I got quite annoyed because I knew that none of those paths were for me. I was not going to sit in a classroom for any longer than I needed to.
And you knew what the other option was.
Yeah, and I knew what the other option was.
Yeah.
I know that, like, look, somebody will pay me. Like, when I'm 18, somebody will pay me $20 an hour right now to go bust my ass, which is all I want to do. Like, so leave me alone and let me go do that. So that's sort of what that turned into.
It's interesting. Your experience with a guidance counselor is similar to mine. You and I might be the same vintage. I'm 77.
Yeah, 80 for me, yeah.
Yeah, so come out high school, you're trying to figure out what the next move is. My marks are horse shit. Like, you know, like 49 in math and 60 in social studies. So you go sit in these things, you know, when you're coming up to your last semester in high school, and you're like, and they're asking you questions.
To be fair to him, I didn't do myself. I remember that day, that meeting was in the early morning class. We had I forget what the class was even called, but him and I had that same guy, guidance counselor, was also a teacher, and we had a disagreement about, I don't even know what the topic was, but he argued that you weren't allowed to argue from from personal history or personal experience. And I was like, well, my personal experience is the only thing I have besides books. And so my argument was like, what is history except like a shared personal experience? Like, it's ridiculous that I can't talk about this. And then he left the room, and then I was just fucking around. You know, you would throw your pencil and try and stick it in the ceiling tile. Yeah. But I somehow hit the fluorescent light bulb, and it broke. So it shattered on my desk. And when he came back in the classroom, I had a broom, and I was trying to dump the glass pieces out the window. I don't know why I didn't put them in the garbage can. So I was not. I earned some of the. He didn't want to deal with you. I earned some of the shit that he was throwing at me. But yeah, it was funny. The only thing they were willing to consider, and when I did the interest survey, like, these are the things you might be good at. Yep. It was actually like a lawyer and police officer. And so I was like, okay, like, police officer, I'll consider. And I considered that briefly, but then I got work and then never looked back. But it'd be interesting. Yeah, I wonder what the guidance counselor game is like now. Like, I wonder. Because I would freaking love to do that job. Like, especially when you accept that, like, kids in their teen years, certainly guys, are just idiots. Like, they're not going to listen anyway. The best you can do is hope to plant like a couple seeds and then send them on their way. Yep. But it'd be interesting to understand what that sort of scene is like now. Like, what do kids want to be besides social media influencers?
That's it. Imagine being like a guidance counselor, and you're sitting across from a 15-year-old, and, you know, what are you interested in? What kind of direction do you see, you know, your life going? And they're like, yeah, I think I want to be a YouTube star. Yeah. And if this guidance counselor is like, you know, anything over 50, that's going to be an awkward conversation.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Huh? Like, but it's funny because you're trying to think about the equivalency when we were growing up. Like, what did we have that was sort of an aspirational, like, NHL? I want to be in the NHL, or I want to be like, I don't know what that is. It's interesting how that's changed. Sort of what kids aspire to be. But that's a scary one, because it was like 70% of kids, that was legitimately their response, where they like wanted to be a YouTube star or a social media influencer as like a career, which there's going to be some, but there aren't going to be that many. Yep. Yeah.
So you get to BC?
Oh yeah, we're still on my
good. I got you going.
So we're in BC. So now I'm working in greenhouse construction, and I know that a life in the construction industry is the right path for me. So once I've kind of made that decision, now I'm not going to fuck around. Now I'm going to try to be the best in the construction industry I can be. So that meant going to work with a different one of my uncles in high-rise construction, so commercial construction. So I did that. Also in Vancouver. Okay, yeah. So I did that for the next 7 years or so, and that was like, that'll wear on you. That's like the big towers that you see and the big like fly tables. It's awesome because it's an awesome education in moving big shit around, like and moving on a pace. Like, once you got to typical floors on those high rises, and then you're trying to turn over a whole floor within 5 days, but you would get like a I forget what they would do. There was old school construction. There would be some ridiculous stuff. We would have some parties in the parkade. Anyway, they incentivized like, if we can get this done in 4 days, we'll take Friday afternoon off. We'll have a big party. We'll basically just get hammered in the parkade of this, in this weird parkade of this building. So we would just bust ass and try to get this done. So I pursued my apprenticeship throughout that. So I did my whole apprenticeship at BCIT, and I trained with a couple of really good carpenters in that industry.
That was the start. You went to school when you got that job? Was that what the start of your?
Yeah. Because I had to be in the greenhouse construction. It was fun, and it's funny. I look back now, and I've never felt more wealthy. Like, I made $14 an hour, and I drove from Chilliwack. I drove from Delta. I lived in Delta, and I drove to Chilliwack sometimes to build the greenhouses, which is like an hour and 5-minute drive. And I made 14 something bucks an hour, and I lived in a house with 5 other guys. And I never felt more wealthy in the rest of my life than I did then for some reason. So, because it just, like, I loved working, and my expenses were low.
Yep.
Anyway, it was funny looking back on that. But in greenhouse construction, it wasn't a licensed. You could become licensed or certified as a glazer. That's like a trade. But I knew I wanted to be a carpenter, so I had to go into more of a carpentry-based trade. So hence the switch, and hence I pursued that for the next. It took me 6 or so years to get it done between working and going to school, and working and going to school.
Did it make sense right away? When you start going to school, because when you're working towards your trade, it's like 2 months of school and then X amount of hours, 2 months of school, X amount of hours.
Oh, heck yeah. And because it was something that, like, the flaw with a lot of high school, certainly my high school education, was like, it just wasn't relevant to me. Like, when my high school career was really wobbling was when I took I think it's a chemistry course, but we were studying stoichiometry, and the only answer I got right on the whole test was whatever the definition of stoichiometry was, which is like the study of relative amounts of substances involved in a chemical reaction. I got my name, and I got the definition of stoichiometry, and the rest was just like, oh, fuck. So it's just blanks. So I didn't do too good in that one. So she actually kicked me out of that class after that test. She's like, Byron, you're not contributing to the class. So then I went across the hall and did grade 13 English, because we had grade 13.
Yep.
And I just talked to the teacher. I'm like, look, Mrs. Drost, I'm not going to do any of the projects. I'm not going to do any of the projects. I'm probably going to fail, but I will contribute to class when I'm here, and I'll read all the books, and I'm happy to talk about it. And she said, it's my last year of teaching. I don't care. If you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. And that was the best class I had in all of high schools. And they took the pressure off. But the difference from there to trade school was like directly applicable to what I was doing the next day, which felt really good. And so that's been kind of my bar for any further education I pursue now, is like, am I going to use this? Can I apply this to my work tomorrow? And if I can, then it's a yes. But if I can't, I'm not as willing to kind of engage with it. So yeah, trade school was great. I loved it.
Yep. So what happened after the high rise? You were there for 6-7 years, work with your uncle. You finished school while you're at the high rise gig?
I got tired of getting rained on. It rains a lot. Yeah. So I got tired of working out in the rain, and I went to work with another one of my uncles. I should send these guys more birthday cards.
How,
it sounds like.
What? Why is it that all your uncles were in these like 3? Like,
I don't know.
What is it?
I don't know. I never thought about that until I said it. Well, I don't know. It's just part of the way they grew up. So I have a Dutch background, so where they were all Dutch immigrants, or their parents were.
Yep.
On both sides, actually. So I think when they came new to Canada, those were just the kind of roles they fell into. Like I said, those 3 paths: the ministry, greenhouses, and flowers, and construction. And so I think I just resonated to the construction side. Yeah.
So on to the next uncle.
On to the next uncle, Uncle Calvin. And this was great because Uncle Calvin is from the school of like master carpenters. So we would build houses, but we would put in the footings, we would form the walls, we would frame the whole house, we would do as much stuff of the ticketed trades as we could while still abiding by our building permits. We would do some of the plumbing rough in, and the plumber would come in on the last day. I remember it when I look back now with how we engaged with plumbers. I'm like, none of our plumbers would go for this, but we would plumb the whole house. The plumber would come in on the last day and be like, like essentially inspect it.
Yep.
Calvin would pay him $200, and then he would move on.
Yep.
So, but that gave me an education in home building that's sort of hard to replicate now.
You knew all the pieces.
Yeah, I knew all the pieces and how everything was supposed to fit together.
Yep.
I knew how to do it myself, but I also knew enough not to get bullshitted when I was on, which has benefited me well in my career now.
Yep.
So that was Calvin's. We did renovations and custom home building, soup to nuts. I don't know why. Do you know why soup to nuts? I'm legit asking.
Dude, I haven't heard that in...
People say it every now and then, and I don't know. I'm so one of those things. You have things where like you don't want to just go to Google and find out what soup to nuts, where that came from.
The person sitting across,
so if you don't know,
is smarter.
If you don't know, Jeff. No. So anyway, so we would build these houses, soup to nuts, and that was a great education. Then we bought a house, lived in it for a few years, renovated it, and sold it. And this was kind of when the Vancouver real estate prices were starting to go a little squirrely in the right direction for us at that time. Mm-hmm. So then I was in my late 20s, had been in construction for 10 years or so. I had my journeyman ticket, and then it felt like time for a change. So when we sold that house, I took the money that I made from that and basically took a year off, and I went to woodworking school. So I lived on the Sunshine Coast in north of Vancouver there. And I had a year where I went to furniture making school. So it was friggin' crazy. It was crazy in that it was amazing. And again, I didn't stop and like reflect and think how cool an experience this was. So I lived in like a little cabin. So I rented this little cabin from a guy who was a glass blower. That was like his whole job, which is crazy to see. I would sit in and help him a little bit. It's a crazy craft. But then I lived in this little cabin. I rode my mountain bike through the rainforest to school, which was where we made our own hand planes, and we would take like a piece of raw steel and turn that into a knife for cutting dovetails, and then we made a bunch of pieces of furniture throughout that. So that was 9 or 10 months that I did that, and I skipped over that. Prior to that, I also used some of that money to go traveling for 4 or 5 months. I went through Asia. And into Mongolia, and then Nepal for a while. So anyway, so I did that, and then after that, I was super broke, and this new skill that I learned was great, but it wasn't actually something I could use to pay the bills.
Is it a ticketed skill or like?
No, it's not. It's just like most of the other people in the class were either like brand new to either they were pursuing an arts career and they thought this would be a good sort of augment to their art and design pursuit, or they were like retired engineers who just loved woodworking. And then there were guys like me in the middle.
Why'd you go? Like what pulled you there?
So it was kind of, it was around the age where I was starting to realize that while I loved construction, hauling sheets of plywood around for the rest of my life just isn't sort of how I wanted to experience construction. So I always liked woodworking. So I just wanted to get better at that. So that's sort of why I chose to go there.
With what kind of goal though? Like, so let's say you get better at woodworking. What would that allow you to do?
The ideal model of that, and it's actually probably more approachable now with social media and the ability to reach potential customers. But the idea then would be to like work on commission-based furniture. So you build custom one-off pieces of furniture, or you develop a line or two that resonates with people and is hosted in galleries or picked up by boutique stores. And then you do that. But when you think about like the hours input into like a truly custom piece of furniture, which takes hundreds of hours to complete, the amount you have to sell that for is so outrageous that it's hard to sort of get paid that way. So actually my current goal and what I'm on track to do now is we have the privilege of building quite large homes or renovations designed by architects usually, or working closely with interior designers. But what I want to do now is come around to that furniture making from sort of the back end, where with every custom project that we deliver, I'll work with the design team to make a custom piece of furniture, and then I'll build that. And that's part of my like role in our accountability chart is like furniture maker, where I get paid for the construction part, but I can also pursue this sort of hobby craft, which is directly adjacent, but I'm not counting it for my living. It's just a nice sort of bonus to add on.
That's cool.
That. See if I can make it happen. We've got one of our first projects where that will occur coming up this year.
Cool.
So we'll see.
You gonna like document this and talk about it?
I should, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
Probably a good idea, says the marketing guy. Yes, yeah, I should.
Because it's really cool, right? Like, it's this conversation goes sideways, but every time when you own your own business and you're trying to do your own thing, you got to do something different, right? There's got to be a thing that makes you different, so that you're not talking about price all the time. You're not talking about products all the time. So to have it's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense for
it fits my background. I was reading a book. I was over the holidays. I was reading a book called The Blueprint, which is quite good, but it's all about like going back and like essentially writing your life story and looking for like common themes throughout that.
When did you wrote this over Christmas?
Yeah. And looking for common themes, and that is one of them. Is like that commitment to craft, and then sort of to what we talked about before, where like, but also my desire to like foster collaboration and bring people together. So how can I weave these things that make me together and put it into a place where people will actually pay me to do it? So that's sort of the struggle. But yeah, then furniture making school with Sunshine Coast, which is awesome. Met some great people. I still have some really good connections from there.
Yep.
But then that led me out here to Calgary, which was 12 years ago now, 13 years ago maybe.
Okay.
Out here to Calgary, working for a large custom home. No, I came back here because I needed money. I was working here on one of the LRT stations. I went back to the commercial world, this time as a foreman.
You know anybody? You just applied for the job?
No, it's with old bosses. They're like, are you fucking done that woodworking bullshit yet? Come back to work. So, okay, so I came back here. I got to see why, like government projects where it's like, this thing was supposed to be $60 million, but it's actually $340 million. I was like part of that $340 million, unfortunately, and got to see just the lack of efficiency. And it's not outright graft, but it's just like bullshit that occurs within those scenarios. So I had a crew of 6 guys for almost 6 months that I had to keep busy on a standby code. So we essentially did nothing, but we couldn't lay everybody off because it was busy time here in Calgary because we wouldn't have been able to get anybody back. So we were like building picnic tables and like sweeping the Walmart parking lot one day. I remember we had like 6 guys sweeping the Walmart parking lot, and I was just like, what is this? So that was kind of soul crushing. So then out of that, I got all my student debt paid off. I got everything done. I bought a condo here.
Have you been here before? Have you been through Calgary before?
No.
Okay, this is
like
your
driving through,
but never like
I'd never
working
been here
for any.
before. No.
Okay.
And my first year of being here was a very stilted. Like I worked like I don't even know how much, 70 or 80 hours a week. Would maybe make it to the mountains on the weekends, but I didn't really get to see Calgary really well. Like the main venue I went to was the Rusty Cage. Do you remember that?
Up on 37th?
Oh yeah.
You went there for the power hour?
Oh boy, yeah.
No way.
Regularly, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I got kicked out of there for being. I was in a wheelchair once. I wasn't in a wheelchair. There was just a wheelchair in my parkade, and so I had a full beard, and somebody bet me that I couldn't be in a wheelchair for a while. So I went home, shaved off my beard except for the mustache, and then I was just
power hour.
Really stupid. Yeah. But that was a dumb place. But again, that culture in commercial construction, unfortunately, of like. Yeah. Of drinking a lot, and sort of that like it's like a screwed up sort of brotherhood of of misfits, and while it's exciting for a little while, it's not. When I looked around, there was nobody there who I wanted to sort of model my life after long term, so I was able to get out of there. Went to work for a custom home builder here, building a large house in Roxborough, and then the flood came along. So after the flood, we had just completed this house, and after the flood, the homeowner invited myself and my partner back to do the flood restoration, which was a large restoration.
Finished the house, and then it got flooded?
Yeah, like 6 or 7 months later. This
Crazy.
is a couple houses in this house in Roxborough. Then we were building another one down in Rideau, a few in that neighborhood along the river there. Yep. So when he got flooded, he invited my partner Bryon and I back to do the restoration, which was the whole main floor and the basement of this like 10,000 square foot super modern house.
Is this at this time, are you working for somebody, or is this your own thing?
That I had decided to go out on my own after that. So I decided to go out on my own just like 2 months before the flood.
Okay. Because you were just ready? And listen, I've been listening here for a little while. There seems to be a common theme with you that either you have your own thoughts. Yeah. You have something to say. Yeah. So to start your own thing was... Did you always know you were going to get there? Yeah. That was. I didn't know exactly what shape it would take, but I don't take direction well, Jeff. So I knew that was going to be something that was part of my future. And you were like, essentially, did you know that you were just building up all these different experiences so that when you decide to do your own thing that you're ready?
No, not at all. I was just
chasing whatever,
just jumping, not chasing whatever. It was always like, I was moving with intention. It's that same ethos of like, if something's going to if it's going to improve my skills and I can apply it tomorrow, then I'll pursue that. And I knew that the next gap where I needed that help was, interacting directly with clients and having the ability to sort of form my own team and establish my own sort of way of thinking and working, because I just saw some things that I didn't quite like, and I didn't like how I never like when construction people are made to feel less than.
Yeah.
And I saw that happen in various forms all across, and it was sort of inherent in the way that the structures were set up, even like a hierarchical, like, you're a project manager, you're a superintendent, you're a foreman, you're a lead foreman, you're an apprentice. You're like, there's almost like a militaristic structure to that, which is necessary to understand where you fit in that equation. But it didn't jive with me all the time. So I knew I was going to do my own thing someday.
But you're being pretty methodical of how you're building your experiences.
Yeah, I wanted to.
Very different. I think there's I think you look at it probably. I might be putting words in your mouth, but it makes sense to you, right? You're doing something that makes sense that you can use, and some people, they can't see that, right? They don't know what their end goal is. So then all of a sudden to start putting things on the board that lead them there, they don't know where to start.
Yeah, and I think at one point it's still the same. My end goal is to build success for the people around me and give them a good living and a respected position within our industry. But my other goal is to get to a place where I can build one of these projects that I get the blessing luxury of doing for my clients, build one of those for myself, like an architectural, properly designed, like well put together home. So that's kind of one of my sort of ultimate goals that I'm trying to get to here. Because there's some interesting homes out there, and there's some interesting ways to think about how they're put together.
Cool. You and I will talk about that off camera, because that'd be really cool to watch. So when you start your own thing, what's the road look like as soon as you start working?
Well, so for long-term Calgarians, remember that flood, and long-term Calgarians, of which I was 2 or 3 years in. Fun side story: I also got married 3 or 4 days after the flood, so that was like crazy.
In town here?
So we had friends and family coming in from all over. We got married on our friend's farm in De Winton.
Oh, cool.
So we did a big outdoor wedding, and it was great, but it was chaotic because I had my condo in Connaught, Letha had her condo in Inglewood, and we couldn't get into either of them. And we're trying to, all our friends and family are coming in. They can't drive through Canmore because the highway's gone. So it was pretty chaotic. But the flood in the neighborhood we were working in created a whole ton of work, right? If you remember that time, there was no shortage of basements that needed to be redone. So we ended up doing 3 projects in Roxborough, one of which was this one. So we just got kind of catapulted into needing to build a team. So we hired 4 or 5 guys. I was still working on the tools and managing projects at the time. And then that just shifted into working with the same architects on another house. One of the ways we found success as we moved forward through that journey of building Brookwright, my legacy company, was I saw a gap here in Calgary in how design was considered as part of the building process. So a lot of builders and a lot of my contemporaries, and this is still the case, they're either they're driven more by a commodity mindset, like build a square foot for as low as you can and sell it for as much as you can. But they also viewed architects and designers as an impediment to progress rather than as a necessary part of the team to build really cool shit. So we just flipped that around, and we marketed and connected almost solely with architects and designers, because if we can make them look like heroes on a project, they're going to do 10 projects a year, whereas a homeowner is going to do 1, and then they might do another one in 10, 15 years, or they might tell their friends. But if you can make architects look like rock stars and also properly consider why they're designing something that way, or why they want that detail to be executed exactly like that, or where they can find opportunities to describe the intent and trust us as a build team to carry it out, which makes their work more efficient, because they're also trying to run small businesses. Anyway, so we wanted to focus more closely on engaging with the design side rather than
different?
just building stuff.
That's a different thought process.
I think it is, yeah.
And I'm asking because, just it makes all the sense in the world to me. I'm not in the industry, but making that connection.
Yeah, but it's because those like really high end architecturally designed custom homes are can be quite a bit more expensive than sort of the average built product. Mm-hmm. So you're necessarily in sort of a niche market at that point, but so many of the people that come into that niche of the industry come from the production side, like the Tricos and the whomever else exists in that sort of greenfield development world. They feed into this, but they don't leave that ethos of like, just give me the plans and get the fuck out of the way. We got this. They don't leave that behind. So I think it was, I don't know if it's not revolutionary by any means, but it resonated more closely with how I thought about my role in this business. And so that's something that caught on, and that's kind of continued to create success for us up till now even.
So the transition from that company to where you are, it's all the same work. Like you're still custom homes,
still in the same lane, still on that same path. So yeah, custom homes and renovations. So what you're referring to is so I had my company Brookwright, which Bryon and I, my partner, we built that up for 9 or 10 years, but then I was invited to join Alair Homes, which is a network of builders across North America. It's a franchise model, so they invited us to join that, which puts it, I guess that is what happened. But so now I operate under that brand. But same type of projects, like I set my own pricing. I pursue the kind of projects I want to pursue. I build my own team, so I have autonomy within that. I just wear a different shirt now.
Cool. I want you to get into the Builders and Brews.
Yeah, I would love to.
This is this one's really interesting to me. For a bunch of, like we talked off camera. Yeah. It's for whatever, I want to know why your head went down this path, and because I think it's going to resonate with me, and I can't wait to clip it because it's going to make sense to other people.
Yeah. No, so Builders and Brews was started because through some of the work I was doing when I was independent, actually when we were Brookwright in our 3rd or 4th year maybe, we had the opportunity to help Annex Ales. This is like right when craft beer here in Alberta was kind of kicking off, when the guys from Toolshed and the folks from Big Rock, I think, helped get a lot of people moving, when they lobbied successfully to have those rules changed, where now you can be a craft brewery at a manageable scale where you can really start up. So we had this sort of proliferation of craft breweries, one of which was Annex Ales. So they were one of the early ones here in Calgary. We had the opportunity to help them build out their tap room. So I was in their tap room, putting cabinets together. They worked with dirt, which was a whole other interesting adventure, just because of a family connection there. So we were working with dirt as well, because I was curious about where the future of construction is going, and part of what they're doing is what that looks like. Anyway, in Annex Ales, working, and we'd be in there. So we're there building cabinetry and walls and stuff, and other people would always be flowing through. But I would see other brewers come in. So I would see, like, one I remember specifically was the guys from Banded Peak came in with a pallet. I'm like, what are you guys doing here? Like, why are you bringing this pallet of bags? Oh, we had extra hops. We know Andrew needs it for this batch of beer he's brewing. He wants to try this new thing. These are the hops he needs. We had extra, so we're dropping them off. I thought, okay, that's cool. I haven't seen that before. Then later, other brewers would come in, and this was the time when they all had and they still do, the Blundstones, the Carhartt pants and the beards, so you could pick a brewer out of a lineup pretty easily. So they would come in and I'd be like, hey guys, how's it going? Like, oh yeah, Andrew and Eric here. Oh yeah, they're in the back. Like, what are you guys doing here? Oh, we screwed up setting up this piece of equipment when we set up our brewery, so we just want to walk them through it so they don't do the same thing. And then finally, another set of brewers come in with trolleys full of kegs. I'm like, okay, what are you guys doing here? Well, they need beer when they throw these doors open. They're going to sell some of our beer, so we're dropping off some kegs. And I thought, holy shit, there's something here that needs to be explored a little bit further, because I don't have other contractors dropping off 2x4s on my sites. I don't have them coming by to say, hey, I noticed that this framing detail is a little bit off. You should probably change that before the inspector gets here. Like, we don't experience that in construction. So when I pulled Andrew aside and was like, what's going on here? He said, well, that's just part of how we operate as an industry. We recognize that by collaborating and building each other up to educate consumers, we can get a bigger share of sort of the beer beverage pie, and we can be more successful together than we could separately. And so when I saw that and started talking to more brewers and understood how that actually played out, we looked at it, why we don't do that in construction and design. Like, it's very fragmented, sort of. We don't collaborate easily. So I talked to a few of my colleagues in the industry and just said, hey, I want to try this. You guys in? They said, yeah, let's do it. So we met at Prairie Dog. I had a designer named Kevin Gray. He has Timber Ridge Studios, and another architectural designer named Ken Staves. They came and gave a presentation on how they approached the pre-construction process, which was just like, it was a conversation I had with them previously. And you have those conversations, well, you could probably turn them into guests now, but it's like, that's interesting. More people need to know that. Mm-hmm. So I just took one of those conversations that I had the privilege of having and said, let's get 40 or 50 construction, design, and tradespeople together, and let's tell them that. Yep. And that just led to hosting, that was probably 4 years ago now, and that led to hosting consistent events where we do a little bit of education and a lot of networking, and all kinds of connections have been formed through that. And now it's a story that's caught on with people in other cities. So it's starting to grow. We've hosted events, Stefan and I.
Co-founder?
Yeah, Stefan is my co-founder. So he came, Stefan was actually my partner Brian's son, and he was studying sports management and working on the Olympic bid, I think, back then. But he kind of saw what I was doing. He also saw that I'm a visionary and not very good at integrating all the different ideas that I have necessarily. So he jumped on board. He said, this is amazing. He was also doing some work in the beer space. He said, let me help you. So he's continued helping me. So he's the co-founder of Builders and Brews. I definitely could not do it without his help and organization, which has been great. But yeah, we've had the privilege of going to, we had an event in Washington, D.C. We had an event in Orlando. We had an event in... we had a couple of events that we haven't even gone to. We've hosted them remotely in Brandon, in Vancouver, and I think we've got one coming up in Toronto. And all the reports back have been like, that was amazing. Like, we didn't know how it was going to go. But you just put construction people in the room with a pint between them and with the right intention, and it's really a pretty easy event to put together.
Why, you're taking for granted your skill set, by the way. P.S. So, why are you getting exposure outside of Calgary?
Some of that's through the Allaire network. Okay. So, like Allaire Allaire has 120 different operating units across North America. So some of it is Allaire looking for ways to establish themselves as leaders in their local communities, which is great. And otherwise, it's just through contacts on Instagram and friends of mine in the builder community who have either been to an event here or had a friend here in Calgary go to an event and say, you got to do this. Because it's an awesome way to the case we make for becoming a local champion, which is what we call our regional hosts. The case for becoming a local champion is pretty easy, especially if you're interested in establishing yourself as a local industry leader, because you're the one that's bringing these people together. And I can draw a direct line from that very, very first event that we hosted to building a $6 million house in Canmore, because that designer was like, wow, you did that. I got to talk to you. So you can start making these connections. And sort of part of my goal for this year is to get to a place where I can become basically the Ask Me Anything guy in construction in Calgary. And it actually happened just before I got here. A buddy's son was texting me to say, hey, I'm in my third year carpentry apprenticeship. I'm looking for a job. Who can I talk to? Oh, well, you can talk to Tim, or you can talk to Rob, or you can talk to Ian. And so here's all their contacts. That feels so good to me. And I love doing it. Again, it's back to that, if there was a way somebody would pay me to do that, that feels good. But if I can take the blessings that I've had in my construction career and apply them to this and ease the way for a few other people, that also feels good.
Did you know what it was going to turn into?
No, not at all. No.
So it surprised you?
Yeah.
And
And we haven't done anything. Like Stefan and I joke sometimes that like, despite our best efforts to kill this thing, we haven't succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of funny in that way.
That connection, right? Like you host the party, bring everybody together.
Yeah.
You know, they know who you are because you're the person that either invited them or is like, you know, like I said, putting it all together. And then it turns into this job down the road. Mm-hmm. Did you know that was going to happen?
No, not really. And it doesn't feel like a job. And what I'm actually looking for now is like, as we scale this, how can I take, maybe I'm on the, but how can I take me out of it? Like, so hosting these events without Stefan or I being there was a really interesting exercise, because it's kind of like you have to let go and you have to be clear about your vision and your core values for other people to be able to execute properly. No, I didn't know. And then when we kind of started to realize, then that was sort of scary in its own right. And I'll be completely honest, like this is where when we set it up as a corporation, we looked at setting it up as a nonprofit, but we stepped back from that just because of the legislative burden of running a nonprofit. It wasn't something we wanted to get involved in. Yep. So we set it up as a corporation. We run it like a nonprofit. We're not trying to make money on this thing. And it's still something we're struggling with, not even how to monetize necessarily, how to make it pay for itself. So we're on that path now as it's gotten more attention, because it's something that sponsors are looking for.
Yep.
Sponsors are looking for a way to connect with their consumers in a more meaningful way than just like having something scroll past their feed that they don't really look at.
Do
so
you
we're
think,
not going to have a problem there.
Do you think monetizing it another way is just getting jobs?
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Was that a part of your, when you decided to like put it all together, you're like, I think I might get a gig?
Sort of. There's some of that. I didn't think it would lead to jobs. No, I thought it would. We talk a lot in my work about relationship capital. So like you want to build up a bank of relationship capital so that when your framer's not done on a Thursday and you say, hey, can you guys come on Saturday because I got the drywallers coming on Monday. You have to build up some relationship capital before you can even consider making that ask. Too many people miss the mark on that and just become those like, you're going to fucking be here on Saturday. You guys said you'd have this done. That sucks. That's not a part of the industry I want to be involved in. So what I saw it as was, this is a way for me to start thinking about how I can build up a bunch of relationship capital all at once and become like a guy where it's like, hey, can you price this job out for me? Yeah, sure. We'd love to. Yeah. And I read somewhere along the way that the best person, like I think as I'm getting older now, I think more about like mentorship and leadership and coaching. And so I read somewhere along the way, the best person you're in a position to help is the person you were 10 years ago. So I thought, how can I find a bunch of me's 10 years ago, put them all in a room and help give them maybe not even the benefit of my experience, but just some guidance on how to avoid some of the pitfalls that I've been through by virtue of screwing them up. Like how can you do that? So I think that's what I originally thought we would be doing, and that's still played out, but in kind of a cool way that I didn't really see happening.
So what I find fascinating is that we talked about this quickly. It was like your idea is a different version of my idea with this podcast.
Yeah.
And the way you've built, the way you launched your idea and the way you came to, when you formulated the idea, it comes from a good intention. Mm-hmm. It's not a, if I do this, I'm going to get that. Yeah. A lot of people miss the mark when they do something that looks like it has good intentions, but right behind that is this like greasy wheel where they're trying to get something for themselves. Yeah. I think these projects that start off with community intention will always play out as long as you're a good person. Yeah. And with good intention. So I find it, the minute I figured out what you're up to with this thing, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This is like a live event built around community and in an industry, to your point, that actually isn't built on community. Yeah.
It was funny. I was listening to when I was listening to some of your past episodes, I was listening to the one with Graham, the energy innovations guy. Yeah. And actually, so this is, I will connect with him if we can get connected. But I was like, there's an element to what I'm doing and an element to what he's doing, and somewhere in between is sort of something I would love to have a beer and brainstorm with. He doesn't drink anymore, but if I could sit down and have a coffee with him and talk that through. There's something interesting to unpack there that I would learn from him, and hopefully some of the ideas what we're doing would be able to be applied to what he's doing. That comes from a place where I have friends in the oil and gas industry who have been to Builders and Brews events just because they're my friends, and they're like, I got to check this out. And they go back and they're like, I wish we could do this in oil and gas. Like, there's so much we could learn and so many people I would know, and you just have to do it. That's the other thing too, is a couple of my colleagues came to me after and they're like, man, we've talked about doing this for years, but you just did it. So that's, if there's like one takeaway from this, that people, if you have an idea, just do it. Like it doesn't matter if it fails or if it's like half of what you hoped. You've done something. And so that's one of the other differences, is that that's probably roots back to like moving a lot and being able to like change things that didn't really scare me, just doing it, because that's what you do. You have a good idea, you just chase it down.
How much energy are you going to give this? So like between family, your full-time job, and this, do you have, okay, here's the question right beside that is, do you work towards balance, or like how do you put these three things together?
They all kind of gloriously blend together, and I have an unfortunate habit of scheduling Builders and Brews events on significant family days. So I did it on an anniversary once. I did it on my wife's birthday once. I miss the mark on the family calendar sometimes. But I aim to give it, I think about it in terms of like kind of 4 hours a week. Stefan probably puts in 8. But that's our goal, is to get to a place where it can pay Stefan a salary of some sort, so that he can focus more attention on it. But for now, like, just kind of grassroots. And I struggle with exactly what you were describing before, where like, it's interesting to start, and what you were talking about before, in that like as soon as you try and commoditize or monetize something, it gets a bit skeezy, and you're just your kind of back gets up. The way Builders and Brews is structured now, and if we continue building it sort of by accident, like let the story tell itself, I think there'll be more long-term value in letting it play out that way than if I was like, fuck construction, I'm doing this. Like I think I would ruin it just by like just by forcing, jumping on it too much.
So I think my mind is like wheeling right now. I think what's very interesting for you, what you've built out, you're building out a community that's going to drive your business eventually. It's going to be this like long relationship build, like the way you want to build your business properly, it's actually going to work. And then I think the other way that the reason Graham sparked your interest, because I think there's an event built into this thing, which is that's the moment you monetize. On the event side of it.
We've talked about that a little bit, but keep wheeling.
Because that's where it all makes sense. And this is where people get so confused on. For me, I explain this as building a brand. People get very confused because they're like, well, this costs you money to pull this off. It's time, it's energy, it's like it's a commitment, right? And then a lot of the times the first question is like, how are you going to make money? And the minute somebody asks you, like, they don't get it. You're building a foundation that's going to drive everything. And that foundation is going to let you have more home projects, and it's going to let you do events, because you've built a platform. People trust you. They know this like community project that you've built out, and now you can monetize that, and that doesn't feel greasy.
And I can travel, which is like another thing I like to do. Like that's one of our goals in Builders and Brews, is like, if we can, like I said, I mentioned some of the places I've had the chance to go. It's also interesting to discover that the craft beer industry is the same all over the place. Like it's really cool that even what we had in Florida was like the same. They're like, that's what we do. And like it's so neat that this like sort of nascent like industry has adopted that ethos, and it's almost like harder for a large established industry to start thinking that way. But I hope if I can be a part of that seed of whatever that looks like, that would feel really good.
I think it's that. I think you were on the exact right path as like if you went and talked to a marketing company, and this marketing company said like, you got to buy ads on Google, and you need a like an SEO website, and you need all this bullshit. What you are doing trumps everything that any marketing company could come up with. Without even knowing, what's actually how this is going to play out. I'm saying this on camera this year, this day, because the cool thing is, in 4 years, when this model is actually built out, it's going to be It's going to be awesome to look at and watch where you take this thing.
Yeah, I'm curious. And now, we've got interesting struggles coming up at us soon with like anything that grows, you have to get a little more serious about it as it comes along. Like there's some liabilities and there's some like just structures, like underlying structures that need to be in place. Those also don't scare me. And it's nice that I can apply lessons from other things I've done. I have to give a fair bit of credit to Amanda and Shar, who run Fuck Up Nights here in Calgary. Have you been to one of those? Oh man, you should get that. You should get that on your radar. It's Fuck Up Nights is something that was started by university students in Mexico who grew disenchanted with hearing all these like success stories in business without hearing any of the failures. So very similar to Builders and Brews, they started, I think this is 10 or 15 years ago, maybe more, but they started a meetup basically where they invited business leaders to share their favorite failures. And then they called it Fuck Up Nights.
Yep.
And now that's in 270 something cities around the world where they host successful. And I think Amanda and Shar have built the one here in Calgary to be one of the most successful in the whole world.
Cool.
And their events are sold out as soon as they're announced, and they bring in some really good speakers and they put on a really good event. So we have used that as sort of an aspirational model for where we might want to get to.
It's super unique, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like part of it too, you talked about it, just like do it, right?
Yeah.
I'm always like hesitant to say that because I'm like, if you're going to do something, you got to have the skill set to pull it off.
Yeah.
And maybe you have to figure out, maybe you have to try it first to see if you actually do have the skills to pull it off. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But for, this one, you're built to do this.
Yeah.
Which is
one of the best things. Some of our current fuel is Bryon, like I mentioned a couple times, my partner in Brookwright. He's a great guy. Also, Stefan's dad. He said to us one time, he's like, I think this is probably the best idea you guys have ever had, but I also think you're too stupid to carry it out. Like, perfect. Thanks, Bryon. See ya. Like, but so it's great. But it's exactly the kind of it's because he knows both of us really well. And he's like, this is what these knuckleheads need to keep something going. So it's
really cool, man. Yeah, and I think it's
but it's also like you're making me blush a little bit, but it's also not me. It's like, it's the fact that this industry is so hungry for that type of connection and collaboration. And construction more broadly has been a real laggard in terms of productivity. You hear it in the news all the time as costs are inflating and the availability of skilled trades is less and less and less and less. Our industry needs to adopt technology, but I think just as importantly, it needs to adopt a different way of thinking about how we all work to build each other up and how we gain skills and hold on to those skills and apply those to the next one. Because there's no standardized process across the board. Like one custom home builder does it this way, another one does it this way, and another one does it this whole other way. There's no standardized process, so we're very slow to be able to adopt new technologies and change. And so back to like, this isn't just me. I just happen to have an idea and be in the right room when the right story came along and have the conviction to see it through. Yep. But the industry is hungry for this type of connection. And it's been neat to see some of the connections that get made and the weird things that like spool off out of these events that I didn't even anticipate, but are also like glorious in that they're working to make the industry better.
Dude, this is like, you're on something here. Yeah. You're on something at a crazy level. And I can say this so emphatically because it's almost the exact same thing that I'm trying to build. Yeah. You asked me like before we got going, and I was like, how it all works and where these people come from and who you talk to. And I'm like, I have somebody on the show. They have a great experience. And now it's turning into their introducing me to their network and then saying who I need to have on the show. Yeah. Which is something I didn't see coming. Mm-hmm. You're experiencing the exact same thing. Yeah. And I think you said this too, you're the visionary. You got the idea, you need some help around structure and process, which is great. But to actually this is the idea for construction in Calgary. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to go crazy. Yeah. And I think that your only problem is going to be allocating time to pull it off. Yeah. Yeah. That's that. As you get older, that becomes the problem with everything. Yeah. Is time and attention, but that's also good. I said, it doesn't feel like work all the time. And thankfully Stefan is around to shoulder a lot of the stuff that does feel like work. So it's really cool, man. Yeah, thanks. This has been a really cool chat. Yeah, it has. I end the show with one question. When I say Calgary, where's your head go? I prepared for this question. So when you say Calgary, I
think, and it's something, so I think big city, small town. I friggin' love Calgary for the both ease of making connections and the ability to find points of connection with people. Like when we got in here, your next guest is somebody that there's no reason we should know each other. We should have any connection. There's a million some people in here, but sure enough, we're one point of separation removed from this person. And in Calgary, it seems to be that way all the time. And it's such a good city to be able to connect with people, be able to start something new, be able to join a community and feel like you're accepted. And that's not something I've experienced in the many, many other cities I've lived in Canada. So that's what I think of as big city, small town.
Yep. I feel the exact same way.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, man. It's like, and that's what's interesting too, right? To pull off your idea, it's all community driven, right? Mm-hmm. It's connections, it's putting people, like-minded people together. Mm-hmm. And you're like, and because it's in Calgary, like this is going to work.
Yeah.
And I think the exact same thing about this show.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm just like, I'm going to build a community. It's all about connections. Yeah. And because it's Calgary, then it just clicks.
Yeah. No, I love it. Thanks, cool, Calgary.
Thanks for your time.
No problem.
This is a really cool one. So, I appreciate it.
Me too. Thanks, Jeff.